Hi there, I'm Chris Aos.
I'm Aos, and this is the Aos-to-Aos podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today on the episode, we're talking about the power of a mindset. The power of mindset is a really important part of being a successful person in any field you want to be in, right?
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like without the mindset, you're basically like a car without a steering wheel. The steering wheel basically tells the car where to go. If you don't have a mindset, you really have no direction. You're just going to be spinning your wheels.
Or I suppose a proper mindset, because everyone has a mindset, but you need the proper one to go in the right direction. One thing we have to talk about today is David Goggins. I think he's probably one of the biggest people in mindset and like restructuring your mindset. And his book was very influential to me. I know that, and then to you as well. Why don't you talk a little bit about like how it kind of influenced you and like what you kind of got from the book?
Well, I read a lot of books, listen to a lot of books. One thing that was really unique about his was it wasn't just cut and dry. It wasn't this, man starts off poor and works and becomes a millionaire or becomes successful. He had a lot of twists and turns in his life. So that to me was really interesting. It wasn't like he had this breakthrough moment. It was like he had this ebb and flow that went on. He would, he'd have little successes, and then he'd have, he'd go one step forward and two steps back.
Right.
And, he had a lot of setbacks in his life. And, as the story progresses, like he starts to figure some things out. And I think that's why I relate to it, because, it wasn't just an aha moment. It was just, he just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and slowly figuring things out. And even towards the end of the book, he doesn't really figure things out until the very end. And then that's when he thought he was already successful. He thought he was this successful athlete and this successful, person that would go out and influence other people. But then he reached a point in his life where he just took that next step. And I think that's what we're all searching for. We're searching for that point where we just get through all the crap and we end up at that next level.
Right. Yeah. That's a big part of the book. He took pretty much everything to the next level. He did things in the way for his passion that I don't think I could do because that's not my passion. I think I could do it. If my passion was to become a Navy SEAL, I could do it. But that's not my passion. So listening to his story, and he went through SEAL training 3 times, Hell Week 3 times. And a couple times he had broken bones. Yeah. Which is, most people don't finish when they're perfectly healthy. And so, because that's his passion, he was driving towards that. And so it kind of serves as a reminder that we all have this thing in us, this drive, but we stop ourselves. You know what I mean? So so to him go through all that, to become what he wanted to be, kind of pushes me to do what I want to, but it's in a different way. It's not like a physical way where I have to work hard physically, but mentally, and like make sure I'm pushing myself to do things like, research and all that stuff. And it's almost like helps me because I know it can get way harder. It could be way harder than this right now, but I'm pushing myself to do better, research or writing better notes for the podcast, or making sure that when I'm drawing up some blueprints, I'm making sure people can read it or whatever, and I'm being mentally strong in those ways, and I'm trying every day to do that too. Which is super important. And I think that one of the things that in the book, he was doing it every day. Like, he wouldn't just like go for a run. He'd go for a like 10, 15 mile run with a heavy backpack on his back. Like, he wouldn't just do the hard thing. He'd add some to it. So, growing off that, what's something in life, like not being like a Navy SEAL, but like, let's say you're just growing a business. What's something you think would work out to be helpful to take that next step? So instead of just working hard, you're taking that next step to work hard. If you want, you can go first, or I can go first, whatever.
Well, why don't you go ahead and go first, and I'll just kind of jump in.
So I think one thing is making sure that you want to get enough sleep, of course. But if you're not getting all the work done, I should probably take a step back. What I do is I set reminders for myself on my phone, and I set everything I need to do each for the day or whatever. So sometimes it's doing the dishes, and then, read a chapter of my book, go for a run, work on my business a little bit, like a specific thing I have to do, or just say work on your business, try to figure out something to do. And I try to check everything off. And I don't want to go to bed until everything's done. Now, I'm not saying to not lose sleep or to lose sleep, but for me, that's something I'm willing to give up, to go that extra mile to make sure that I'm, if I have to be up in the morning at 6, I should be going to bed around 10 o'clock, but I'll push myself to midnight because I really want to get all this stuff done. So these little things, pushing yourself to that point and then getting up in the morning without having to snooze the alarm. That's a big one too, is like not snoozing the alarm, not sitting around, not watching too much TV. If you want to watch TV, maybe reward yourself after you get it done. But if you have something like that, like a task you want to get done, like if you have doing the dishes, don't just do the dishes, wash the oven and, do all this stuff. Maybe push yourself to that point, and that can translate to other parts. For me, if I'm going to be doing, like a podcast, I have my own personal podcast, and then I have this one. If I'm doing a podcast, maybe I'll get the one edited really fast so that I can put it up to upload, and then maybe work on the notes or be able to work on my business. I make sure to put doesn't have to be done a few days before, but I do it so that I don't have to later. And I push myself to the point where I'm doing more so that later on I'll be more successful. Or if something like is thrown in the mix, I can deal with that. And that's pretty much what he's talking about in the book, is he's mentally tough enough that if he wakes up one day and he finds out his mom died, like he can handle that. You know what I mean? Because, if you push yourself to the point where you're able to deal with anything, you know what I mean? Like he's able to deal with anything physically, and then he pushed himself mentally. If I'm able to push myself in the same way, but in business, I can make it so that I'm mentally tough in just everyday life. You know what I mean? So if I come home and after a long day and I need to clean the house before, my fiance gets home, I can do that. And I mean, that sounds kind of like a mundane task, and it doesn't sound like it helps, but it really does. Doing the little things really does help.
I get what you mean. I mean, like when you got so many things on the go, and if you're not doing them, like if you have 100 things on the go, that 101st thing really kind of puts you over the edge. It kind of puts you into a state of panic.
Right.
You're trying to figure out how you're going to deal with this extra thing. But if you deal with 100 things that you have to deal with in a day, like getting up, first time, and like that 5 or 10 minutes of snoozing. I mean, that's you could already have in that 10 minutes, have your teeth brushed, have your pants on,
Right.
starting your day, So, if you try and get those 100 things out of the way to start your day, when you have, 1 or 2 or 3 additional things that add on at the end of the day, you're like, okay, well, I'll get these done. That's a, really good example of the mindset you have to have,
Right.
having some kind of routine. I mean, I do the same thing when I get up in the morning. I get up and I make my bed and I have my coffee and I brush my teeth, and I try and get all that stuff done in the morning. I find that if I just come out and have coffee right away, then it just it kind of throws everything else off.
Right. Yeah, I understand that. It's like the principle of the thing, like snoozing the alarm, like that's 10 minutes. 10 minutes isn't that big of a deal if you like maybe quickly brush your teeth or quickly put on your pants, you know what I mean? But you're setting yourself back in your mindset. Like not just in the day, in your mindset, because you think, I don't have to get up, I don't have to be disciplined enough. It's all about little disciplines. You don't want to do the dishes, do them anyway. I don't want to get up at my first alarm, I'm doing it anyway. I have a hard time a lot of the times just because like I stay up later to do work on business, whatever it is, podcast maybe, and I stay up a little later, and then I have to wake up at 6:45 to go to work. So, I have a little trouble getting up, but I jump up anyway because I know it's going to help me later on down the road. So, yeah, that doing the little things really does translate into big things.
Yeah.
I remember being in football, and my coaches would always nitpick me about my footwork. And I'm like, I'm going to tackle a guy, you know what I mean? So why does it matter about my footwork? But he was saying the little things translate to big things. You'll get there like 0.1 second faster but the little things will translate into big things because, you know, the how much you're moving your legs or whatever, and not how little you're moving your legs, I suppose. You're not doing unnecessary steps, you know, translate into something, and then, you know, making sure you're being focused translate into something, and eventually these little steps turn into big steps, and you become a better football player because of it. And it's the same thing in life. Little things turn into big things.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's another book that I read that kind of talked about how those little changes make such a huge difference in your life. They talked about the British cycling team. The British cycling team for a long time was the laughingstock. There was actually a company in Britain that manufactured bikes that would not sell them to the British cycling team because they were so bad. They didn't want, you know, their sales to be affected by the bad reputation the cycling team had. So they brought in a coach, and this guy came in, and his whole theory was making little 1% changes, little tiny changes. And they started doing things like, you know, they had a surgeon come in, teach them how to wash their hands. You know, it doesn't seem significant, but, you know, if they wash their hands properly, they're less likely to get a cold, right?
Right.
They they tested out their riding attire. You know, they found the riding attire that just gave them that little bit more of an edge, or in the wintertime held in a little bit more heat, or in the summertime got rid of a bit more heat. They did things like they tested the seats, you know, just to find the seat that made the riders more comfortable, which made them perform better. And what happened is, after I think it was about 3 years, the British cycling team, I think it was between 2012 and 2018, won 5 out of 6 Tour de France.
Dang.
Yeah. And good. They won, I think it was 9 gold medals at the 2016 games. Anyway,
they won sure. significant games.
And then when the games went to England, they set a whole bunch of world records, Olympic records, and, you know, I think they came out with 9 gold medals altogether.
Okay.
And that was just a matter of them finding little 1% changes to make over and over and over again. And if you apply that same, you know, thing to your life, I mean, like 10 minutes doesn't seem significant. Right. But if you make a decision, I'm not going to snooze my alarm. When that alarm goes off, I'm going to get up and I'm going to start my day. That little change, you know, you might make, you know, 20 little 1% changes, and number 19 still hasn't made a difference, but number 20, you know, you reach what they call critical mass. Right. And that's when all of a sudden all the magic happens, and you actually start seeing those big changes in your life. So
right, that makes a lot of sense. You know, you always hear billionaires have the same 24 hours in a day that you do. I think it's interesting to note that Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, if anybody at home doesn't know, I'm not sure if that's even possible at this point, but if anybody doesn't know, Bill Gates created Microsoft, of course, was one of the founders of Microsoft and worked for them for a long time. And then Jeff Bezos, of course, founded Amazon. They both do their dishes every night. They make it a priority to do their dishes every single night. That's not just, like, that's pretty significant if you think about it. Like, these billionaires do their dishes every single night. They're mentally tough, and, you know, between, like, everyday people, they probably have way more of a workload than we do. They're running multi-billion-dollar companies. Bill Gates now is running his Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Also, you know, he's doing all this other things. He owns quite a bit of the company of Microsoft, so I'm sure that entails to more work. And they have a ton of workload on them, but they still find time to do their dishes every night. And I think that's really significant to remember, because it builds mental toughness. You know, if you have all this stuff you have to work on, you want to just go home and sit on the couch. You shouldn't go home and sit on the couch. You know what I mean? Because it builds mental toughness, and you're able to, I think, deal with more because of it, even though it seems like that will be your breaking point, because you don't want to be on your feet another second. But it'll be you'll be better because of it. But yeah, what you were saying about the bicycle team, that's pretty awesome. Especially since, did they change any of the riders, or?
No, it was the same riders. Yeah, it was the same team. The only thing that changed was, like I say, those little 1% changes, trying to find that little bit of an edge.
Right, and what you said about the washing the hands doesn't make really any difference, besides, like, they might not get a cold. But if I was a rider and I'm like, what do I care about a cold? You know what I mean? I'm just working through it. But it changes your mindset. You're like, now I'm not going to get a cold. In your subconscious mind, you're like, now I'm not going to get a cold. I'm going to be that much better. Now I have a comfortable seat. I'm going to be that much better. And you're working harder because your subconscious mind tells you you're going to be better. You're going to be better. And working towards these awesome things. Like if I got into work at 5 a.m. and I was supposed to wash my hands really good so I didn't get a cold, like I wouldn't want to do that every day. But working on that every day so that your subconscious mind tells you this is why, and you mean you're not going to get sick, you're going to be better. You're not going to get sick, you're going to be better every single day, plus all the other little 1% changes. That adds up to, how many was it? 5 titles?
5 titles in 6 years, yeah.
That's pretty awesome. That's a significant change. One other similar kind of organization that did that is the New England Patriots. If you look, I like to research the New England Patriots because they're obviously wildly successful, a football team. And if you look at the New England Patriots, they have good players, but their players aren't necessarily stars. Like there's Tom Brady, of course, who's undeniably a star. Other players that are stars, but if you really look at the players, they're good. And then Tom Brady's great, but they're good and they make up a great team. And I really wanted to look behind that. So I went behind the scenes and I looked at the equipment staff, the people, the recruiters. And what I found was a energized, well managed team that is really good at working with each other. You think in a football team that it's the outside, it's the players. Just like in life, you think that it's, just working hard and grinding your butt off, you know what I mean? And just like moving and moving and moving. But sometimes it's the behind the scenes, like the washing the hands thing. In the organization, they had really good just equipment managers who managed cleats and, helmets. And you don't think that would translate to anything significant, but the New England Patriots are wildly successful as a football team. So as an organization, they're very sound, and that translates to the star of the show, i.e. the football players, to be wildly successful as well. And I think that's translating into life as well. So, if you're working hard at making sure all these little things, like we've been saying over and over throughout this podcast, it's going to translate into your own life's football team in a way. The analogy of it is going to be very successful in your own way, whatever you want to be. So start with the small things to make sure you have a sound foundation before you try to work up onto the big scale things, such as working really hard.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. I mean, like we've talked about mental toughness and little habits and building on your habits and things like that. Now, what about? I mean, I guess we have kind of touched on it a little bit about self-talk. I mean, you talked about how I don't want to do this, but yesterday is going to thank me for doing this today.
Right.
So that's kind of a form of self-talk, but it's, I guess, my question for you is how big do you think that those positive, good thoughts are on your mindset?
It's really actually, I think it's more important than you'd think. I'm not a psychologist, but if you think about it, like when people are very successful, what do you hear them say about other people's thoughts? If you're like, what do you think about the way people think about you? I think most of them would say, like most really successful people would say, I don't care what people think about me. Obviously, there's some that would probably still care, but a lot of them don't. But they probably think very highly of what they think about themselves. I think everyone is a bit like that. Obviously, there's a bit more pressure from people who don't build that kind of a mindset of outside. A lot of people do care what people think about them, but we all have that very high self, like we want to be where we want to be in our own eyes, if that makes sense. So we care what we think about ourselves. So if you're thinking badly about yourself, if you're like, well, I failed at working out, so I can't do a business, or I did that, if you're putting that into your own mind, it's going to translate just like the little things you do every day to make sure you're successful, like doing the dishes, maybe washing your hands really well so you don't get a cold, and those build up to something. It's the same way, just on the opposite spectrum. if you're telling yourself every day you can't, you're building a unsteady foundation that's not going to make anything happen with. So instead of building a solid foundation like the Patriots, you might be building something like the Browns. And that's a bad analogy because, I mean, the Browns, of course, are still a professional football team and people in there are wildly successful and have a good mindset, but that's the analogy there. You're adding things onto your life by having a negative mindset that shouldn't be there. And it's going to take longer for you to correct that by putting positive thoughts in. So on the other side of that, you know, not even just doing things like washing your hands and doing the dishes. You know, if you put positive mindsets, you can, eventually you're going to believe you can. Sometimes when I'm reading my book, I'm like reading it and I'm like thinking about finishing the book. And I don't finish too many books that I physically read. I've listened to books and obviously that's very easy, but I usually get distracted and I'm not able to finish books. And so now I'm forcing myself to finish the book. I'm like, I can, and I'm going to. And now I'm halfway through the book and I haven't stopped yet. So, you know, putting that into your mind and breaking those negative thoughts are very important. And also just stopping the negative thoughts right out. But, you know, that's obviously very hard for some people. You gotta work on that every single day. Yeah. It's almost as hard as, like we said, coming home and doing the dishes after a long day. Stopping negative thoughts when it's your process, it's your excuse, it's your almost remedy, which is a terrible, you know, remedy to have, but it's your remedy in a way of dealing with a bad day is negative thoughts. It's very hard to break that process, but if you want to be somewhere in life, you got to do it.
I think it's kind of interesting. I mean, if we look at it, I mean, we started off this podcast talking about David Goggins and his book. It's called Can't Hurt Me, for anyone out there that wants to look it up. And now, just I guess good to mention that we are not getting paid to do a review of his book. We just both found it very encouraging. But one of the takeaways I got from the book was that, you know, he had a positive mindset, but he kind of approached it a little bit different. And correct me if you read it differently, but he almost fed on people being negative. Yeah. When people said, you can't do this, he would do it. I mean, in the book, it talks about when he he attempted, I think it was 3 times to set the record for the pull-ups. And, you know, people kept telling him, you can't do this, you can't do this. And, you know, like after the first attempt, he had to, you know, give up because his hands gave out on him. Same thing in the second attempt. Well, when he finally, you know, he just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and everyone told him, you know, you don't have the right physique for it. You know, you are not the kind of person that can do this many pull-ups. And, you know, but he just kept feeding on that negative, you know, those negative comments and that negative attitude from people and saying, you know, I can do this. Right. I'm going to prove you wrong, you know. So I guess it's kind of interesting to look at it from a different perspective that, you know, you can take that negativity because, I mean, a lot of us are surrounded by people that are negative. Right. You know, we have people telling us, oh, that's never going to work, or, you know, you're doing it the wrong way or something like that, you know. But, you know, if we were to take David Goggins' mindset, you know, and just feed off that negativity, it's, you know, for some people, it's a good motivator. I mean, not everyone's the same. You know, some people take that negativity and they internalize it and they never go anywhere in life. Right. So, you know, that's not going to work for everyone. For those, you know, like it's when we talk about these different self-help books, we've talked about how, you know, you can go in and you can find something in, you know, one little thing in 100 different books. You know, no one's ever going to find that perfect book that's just going to, you know, cause this aha moment and, you know, make you successful. But it's just, I mean, I don't know. It's just a completely different mindset, and I think it's interesting to mention it here. Yeah. One thing about that too, first of all, spoiler alert, he beat the record. He beat the record. He did beat so all the naysayers were wrong. Yeah. But one important thing is, you know, those negative thoughts, if you can really get into a process of not letting your own negative thoughts in, other people's negative thoughts are basically nothing. Because, you know, you think very highly of yourself and other people, but if you're able to break that when other people chime in, you're basically like, okay, whatever. So other people's negative thoughts can be a good fuel. But where was I going? Oh, anyway, one
one thing he did in the book, I noticed, was he was very real with himself. When he was 300 pounds, he was going to go to Navy SEAL training. He was like, "You're fat, dude. You need to get it done." And there's a big difference when you're training yourself to be a better anything, really, is that there's a difference between a negative mindset and a real mindset. But they both hurt, and then one of them hurts you. And a negative mindset hurts you. It doesn't give you any benefit, and it hurts your feelings or whatever, takes you back, whatever it is. A real mindset is like me going, "Dude, you're skinny, get in the gym. You're not going to build any muscle until you do." Or, "You're lazy, finish this book," or something like that. And that hurts sometimes, like thinking to yourself, because you want to think very highly of yourself. So, I want to go, "No, I'm big, I'm muscular. No, I can finish books." You know what I mean? But I don't. I say, "Dude, you can't, you're lazy. You need to finish this book to break that mindset." And it hurts me, but it helps me. And that's a real mindset. Making sure that, if you're 300 pounds, don't tell yourself, "Maybe I should eat some lettuce." Tell yourself, "Dude, you're fat, get in the gym."
Yeah.
Or eat better, or whatever it is. That's a real mindset. Making sure that, don't be negative about it. Don't be like, "I'm fat, dude. Might as well just sit on the couch," or, "Nothing good happens to me." Think, "I'm fat. I'm going to get in the gym, and I'm not going to be like this next year." Be real with yourself. Sorry.
It's kind of interesting. No, that's fine. I mean, as you're talking, you're kind of bringing up other thoughts with me. I think I mentioned this other book. Maybe we'll talk about it in a future podcast. But it talks about kind of the same thing you were just talking about, having real goals and having a realistic outlook. I think one of the things that I mentioned to you is, you want to lose 10 pounds, but you're not going to do the push-ups, or you're not going to lose 10 pounds.
Right.
You're being realistic with yourself. You're not losing weight because you're not exercising.
Right.
Where we have a lot of people out there that are pushing the positive side of things. Think positively. You're skinny, you're losing weight, it just hasn't happened yet. Imagine what you want, and it'll happen. And I'm not saying that that's wrong. I think that goes back to what we were talking about, that there's different systems that are going to work for different people. You just got to find the one. But I think that that's going to be a really small portion. I think that most of the people out there in the world today that are, either realists or, I don't know what the proper word is for it. Realist might be the thing. We know that we have to work hard.
Right.
Some people are just lucky. Some people just are always in the right place at the right time. But the majority of the people out there, like you and I, have to work hard for what we want, which means that we have to develop mental toughness, and we have to develop these systems. And I think we also have to be really honest with ourselves. These podcasts, we both know that, we're not where we want to be with them.
Right.
We're working on them. We're just out here and we're doing it. And we're going through the motions because we eventually want to be successful. We want to have a successful YouTube channel.
Right.
We enjoy this, but at the same time, we also know that we need to do a lot of work.
Right.
So, for us, we need to put systems in place where, real systems. Hey, if we don't do another video this week and upload it, on our upload schedule, then people aren't going to take us seriously.
Right.
That's a real statement that we can say to ourselves, and that's where I find my motivation. I don't feel like sitting here sometimes.
Right.
I don't feel like, I'm looking for every excuse in the book when we're sitting here. Oh, well, maybe the microphone's not working properly. Maybe we should just do this tomorrow.
Right.
Or maybe we should do this next week or something like that. But then I got to tell myself, no, let's just do it. Let's get it done. And sometimes you got to be honest with yourself. Like, who cares how it turns out? We're going through the motions.
Right.
We're going to get better. It's going to get successful. We just have to keep doing it.
Right. Yeah. And also our first episode versus when we get to episode maybe 200-300, what's going to be, it's going to be night and day from each other.
Yeah.
We're going to look back and be we're so smooth on the mic now. And I think we've even improved since we started. We're able to come up with more. We're not having these big lulls. It's probably going to show up when we're not editing it as much, knock on wood. But but we're doing it and we're going through the motions, but didn't wait until we were good. We're getting good as we go. Making sure that, we're getting better every time, maybe writing a little bit better notes. I think my notes are a bit better. I would just write, talk about investing, talk about this. Now I'm kind of going into, more depth with the things. So I'm finding improvement every single day in like when we're going through the motions of it. And like I said, when we get to episode 100, we're going to be pretty good on the mic that maybe people will start tuning in. And even though like right now, people aren't tuning in, like they are, but not at the pace we want to get to. At that point, when we're so smooth on the mic that, it comes off our lips like butter, people are going to start tuning in. That's when we're really going to start growing things. And we're going to leave all the other podcasts up because that was our groundwork. Yeah. And it's really showing what we preach and everything. And it's really, I don't know, I think this podcast is probably one of my favorite things to do lately, just because I know one day when I'm successful and where I want to be, people are going to look back on me right now. And, I hope one day I'll have one of those Instagram posts on those motivational sites. It's like, he was here, now he's here. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. That's something that motivates me every day.
Yeah. Me too. I mean, this is all kind of what we've talked about just practicing the mindset.
Right.
Just going through the motions, practicing what we preach, just making sure that, we're not just out there, spouting off a lot of words or copying people or saying the same thing everyone else is saying. I mean, I think that's one of the unique things about us and about this podcast is that we're talking from two different perspectives, but also from a really open-minded perspective.
Right.
I mean, you are young and you're exploring and, you see all these different people out there and you've been, I don't know if... See, at my age, I'm more picking and choosing, right? I've kind of seen where, what doesn't work for me and what does work for me. You're at a point where you're just kind of using the shotgun effect. You're out there, you're sampling all the cookies. Yeah. You're trying to figure out what it is that's going to, catapult you to the next level, which is good. But for me, I have the different perspective. I know that, this technique over here doesn't work for me. So, I'm a little bit more selective, but I'm also open-minded. I mean, I sit here and I listen to some of the things you say and I'm like, wow, some of that stuff really sticks in my head. Like the talking about the today and tomorrow you. I mean, that's stuck in my head since you first mentioned it. I mean, it's an incredible mindset and I'm going to use that.
Yeah, we don't ever run out of that. I think right now, I know what you're talking about. Like, I'll shoot off ideas. I realize what I do like and I don't like. I take the advice. I do this, do that. Because I'm so young and that's kind of my mindset, you know what I mean? As we progress and we get older, I think we realize more of what we do like and don't like, and then we combine them into like, our business know-how and this and that, and like ways to go in each direction. Like if we're doing business, ways to do business in each direction or in life and things like that. But we never really lose that mindset, especially people with the entrepreneur's like mind or a heart, I guess you could say, like me and you. We never really lose that mindset. So when we're talking about things, I'd say more things probably stick in my head, but because I haven't gone through all of them yet. You've probably gone through more of them, so less things come as a surprise to you, I'd say, and you have to work through less things. And that's really cool too, because of the two different generations thing, like we've been talking about. Like, I can come to you with, all the, like my mindset ideas, and you might have a contradictory statement or whatever to bounce off of me, and I might think of, a million different things to counter that, and we can have a conversation, and I might completely abandon my idea or whatever it is, or just tweak it a little bit. And, that's because you have had more experience. I remember when we were younger, you had all these businesses and things like that, and I didn't really think anything of them because I thought back then businesses meant you owned like a restaurant or something like that. And you had you installed satellites on trucks and things such as that. But, you've been working at this for a very long time while I'm relatively new at it. So you have more of a, I'd say, experienced mindset, and I'm still new. So I'm still like, try this, try that, try that. And I know my fiance gets really, almost angry at that. I'm trying new things all the time, dropping things. She's like, just stick to one thing. And I'm just like, I can't. And I think it's an opportunity in my lifetime that I'm not going to get. later on in life. And that's not a bad thing. That's not like a shot against you.
No.
It's just the way that, you know, it works. You know what I mean? Like when I'm older, I'm going to have less things to, you know, understand, I think, like that too. I mean, there's so far you can get in that kind of stuff because I don't think like everything else, like if you're studying computers, you're never going to run out of things to study. It's always changing. But a mindset, that's something that like we don't understand fully, but it's not going anywhere. We're working towards the same thing. You know what I mean? All of us at the same time, and it's not like it's going to be changing. It's not like we're going to have to go back and you know learn a new skill for a mindset. It's just something that is there, and we're just all working the same path, the same speed, and it's never going to go away. So if that makes any sense.
That makes perfect sense.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if I'd really have to add anything to that because I mean you were pretty thorough in what you said there. So I guess the only thing really left to talk about is, you know, like what are some of the tips that you would give, you know, people out there to, you know, to sharpen their mind and to improve their mindset. I mean, we talked about our mindset, but you know, like if you could pick the top 3 things that you would tell somebody, you know, these are the three things you should start with, what would they be?
You know, everyone's different, so I wouldn't take this as like a prescription to do it, you know what I mean? But I think that if you're starting like me, in my shoes and things like that, I have a few that are good, but I should probably preface that with saying, anything that, if you're not like me at all, like if you're completely different, if you're starting from a different point, just add a little bit of pain every day. I wouldn't say pain, but something that challenges you.
Something that stretches you.
Stretches you, because like you're never going to grow unless you stretch, right? That in not in physical form, but you know, in mental form. So do something every day that challenges you just a little bit. We talked about the little 1% changes. Just make little tiny changes every single day. Read a little more every day. Exercise a little more every day. Maybe add a pull-up every day. Maybe add a push-up every day. You know what I mean? Just add little things every day. A specific 3 that I would have would probably be like number 1, read more. If you're already reading a ton, obviously this doesn't count for you, but for me personally, it's read more. I want to learn how to expand my vocabulary. I used to have not speech problems, but I mumbled a lot. I, you know, had just a small like stutter every once in a while if I got really nervous. So I want to expand my vocabulary, and I want to make sure that, you know, I'm learning a new word every day, or, you know, learning how to read faster every day. And I might read an extra page every day, or, you know, an extra chapter every day, and that'll translate to later on reading extra books each week. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing, 1% every day. So I'm reading a little more every day. So if you're like me, maybe read a little bit more every day, and there's directions that you can go in. So don't go to the fiction if you want to learn business. I mean, you can do that too, but read more business books because they are very helpful. Like the David Goggins book, very helpful. I would say almost changed my life. I think I was headed in that direction, and it reinforced me. So I wouldn't say changed my life, but it really did help me in a way that, you know, I would say sharpened the tools I already had. Gave me more insight to the ideas I already had, and opened a few other doors that I didn't even think about. So, you know, make sure to be smart about it, and learn more, read more. And you don't even have to read, just like audiobook maybe, something. And that'll help your vocabulary, all that kind of stuff. Another thing would be probably exercise. That's one thing for me, I think helps you out in your overall mental toughness, because nobody likes exercise. I don't think I've met a single person who really likes exercise. They might like the results, the challenge, whatever it is, but they don't like exercise. And it's important to realize that, like, if you go out every single day and you run on the treadmill for 5 minutes, and then, you know, 2 weeks down the road, 15, and then 2 weeks down the road, you're running, you know, eventually you might be competing in 5Ks. You know what I mean? It adds on to each other, and it's little 1% changes like we've been talking about, and I've probably beaten a dead horse at this point, but little changes in your exercise. But then the exercise kind of translates to being better in other areas. So, you build mental toughness, just like if you're benching every single day, you're going to build calluses on your hands. You're going to build calluses on your minds, which is something that David Goggins talked about. So, you have the mental toughness to run for 15 minutes, which isn't an easy task. So you're going to have the mental toughness to do other things in life, such as do your dishes and, everything else we've been talking about.
Absolutely.
But I think another thing that's important is probably, for me at least, working on things like family. I want to be successful, but I don't think I'll ever feel successful unless I work on my family. Making sure I'm spending time with people, and I have been lacking on that recently. But I'm really trying to break those habits of not calling or not doing whatever. For me to be successful, I need to be able to be in touch with my family. So, and it's almost like anything else. Like, you guys live in a different town, and for one sister, it's a different country. So, it's almost pretty hard to work on a relationship when you're that far away. I mean, it's easy to text, but that's really not the same thing as building a relationship. So, I work every day to make sure that I'm starting to work every day to make sure that I'm putting my family first. Because just like we've had this kind of theme throughout the entire series, I suppose, of our podcast, is success is happiness. It's not money. It's not cars. It's happiness. Mm-hmm. So my family comes first. You know what I mean? So if I leave them behind, but I have all this money, I'm going to be miserable. You know what I mean? So I make sure every day to work a little bit towards that. So that's my third thing.
Okay.
But did you have? I got a little weird there. Did you have 3 things as well, or?
Yeah, mine are, I guess, I didn't really think about this before the podcast, but, my top 3 tips would probably be, number 1 would be honest. Mm-hmm. Be honest with yourself. Know your limitations, but also know that you can remove those limitations. It just depends on how hard you want to work. Talking about how, being honest, well, I'm not going to be successful unless I put the hard work in. Right. Or the reason you're not successful is because you didn't do the work. Like being honest with yourself. I think for me, that's one of the big things with me. I talk to myself like that all the time. Mm-hmm. If I want to lose 5 pounds, well, you're not going to lose 5 pounds if you don't, do the exercise or you don't eat properly. Mm-hmm. That's not being negative. It's just being honest with yourself that, you have to put the work in. Right. The second thing would be just working on your mental acuity, or maybe acuity is not the right word, but just, making sure that you're, servicing your mind, that you're growing in your mind, that you're growing in your self-talk, that you're, talking to yourself in the way that a successful person would. And that, you get that in a lot of different ways by reading books and things like that. Know that you can be successful. I mean, it's one of the things that, you and I have talked about. We've always told you guys that you can be whatever you want. Mm-hmm. You just have to put the work in. Right. A lot of people didn't have that when they were young, right, or else they had the opposite. They were told they'll never be anything. Well, you know what? If you can change that mindset and know that, it ties into the first one, being honest. If I put in the hard work, I can be successful. So, you can, if you can get yourself in the right mindset, you can be successful. And I think the third one is just being realistic. Mm-hmm. And that's a little bit different than honesty. I guess all 3 of them tie together, but, actually know where you want to be in life. I think that's the one thing with David Goggins. When he set out, he said, here's where I'm at. Here's where I want to be. I'm a 300-pound guy right now. I want to be a Navy SEAL. Right. So he had the end goal in mind. And once he focused in on that end goal, he worked towards it. So, working out where you want to be in life, like for you, we've talked about this. You want to be a successful entrepreneur. You don't want to have fancy cars at this point in life. You know, that's not your end goal. You know where you want to be. You want to have the money to provide for your family, to have, the things in life that you want. You want that financial security, and that's your definition of success. So you know where you want to be. Right. For me, older, I'm basically the same thing. I want to have enough money in the bank that I don't have to check it when I go to the grocery store. That I just go and I buy groceries, and then I know there's going to be money left over in my bank account. For me, that's success. When I was young, I wanted all the fast cars and all that kind of stuff, but I wasn't willing to put in the work.
Right.
So I wasn't being realistic.
Right.
Is what it is.
Makes sense.
I spent, my younger years partying and running around and doing all that kind of stuff. And, I did not, if I would have been your age and I would have decided at your age, I want to be successful, I want to drive fancy cars, I probably could have done it. But, I didn't have the proper mindset. I wasn't being realistic. I basically had this plan that I was going to be rich and I was going to drive a Ferrari, but I didn't know how I was going to get there.
Right.
So I think those would be for me, that would be my top three.
So there was a disconnect in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that all translates back to mindset too. But yeah, one thing you did say, some people have the opposite of you can do whatever you want. It's you can't do anything. Sometimes it's not the parents' fault in a way. They are just bought into the system. So they believe you shouldn't become a businessman. You should become a doctor because you're going to be successful as a doctor. You know what I mean? And, this isn't a bad mindset to have, but only if you want to be a doctor it is. So, and obviously business isn't the other option. There's millions of options. I'd say even billions of options. You could even, play around with trillions of options because each option is being created every day. But back to what I was saying, the people who, raise the kind of people that don't believe they can do it aren't always bad people. You know what I mean? Sometimes they just think that college is the way to go. But then, you get into student loan debt. And sometimes college is the way to go. But if you want to be an architect or a doctor or, a psychiatrist or something like that, that's the way to go is college. But, I mean, if you don't want to be that, if you want to be an entrepreneur, maybe go to college if, there's a upside to that. You got to calculate it for yourself. But yeah, that's just what I had to mention to that. So, yeah. One thing, too, I think that we should probably shut down here pretty quick, but I wanted to mention this. The book I'm reading right now, it's called Hustle by Neil Patel. It's about pretty much he's an immigrant. He and the two other guys that helped him write the book are immigrants as well, and they're all very successful in their lives through the power of a mindset and all that other stuff. It's a bit more animated than the David Goggins book. The David Goggins was a bit more gritty. This has a lot more examples and movie references and all that stuff. But the message behind it is really interesting. And we mentioned earlier about luck. And I wanted to kind of close with this because it's an important thing to realize, because we think that I had two guys at work tell me that it's luck that ends up making you successful. It's not hard work, it's luck. That's all it is. And luck is a real thing, but it's not what people think it is. It's not a mystical being that says you're successful, you're not. It's, if someone stumbles upon your website and then buys something, that's luck. But you have to have your website to do that, and there's the hard work and the dedication. And the same thing with podcasts. Like, if I want to become, good at making podcasts, and I want to make my podcast or a podcast, successful, like, there's luck involved because people might stumble upon it, but you have to put in the work to get the videos out to then possibly have people stumble upon it. So the book talks about different types of luck. There's dumb luck, where I stumble across a $20 bill and then I can, take it to go do whatever I want with it. Calculated luck, where we're putting out videos and then people may stumble upon it. Or, we're, using SEO, which is very hard work, and, making sure the videos drive traffic, but people might just accidentally stumble upon it. They might just type up something accidentally wrong and find it and like it and, subscribe. But there's that. And then there's other types of luck I can't quite remember. But, having a mindset of you, like you said, I think, be honest with yourself. Know that luck is not an excuse. You know what I mean? It's not a mystical force. It doesn't say you are successful, you're not successful. It's a real thing, but it's a word for an accident. It's not a being. It's not a force. It is just a word. So you have to kind of break that down to I think, be successful in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I think that'll about do it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed the show.
Yeah. Down below is going to be our social media and all of our links that we have down there. Make sure to check it out. Leave a like and comment if you want us to talk about anything else in a future episode.
And make sure to hit that notification bell so you're notified when we upload new videos.
Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time.
See you next time.